the Young Thug snitching incident as alleged by Charleston White and a few others. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really, really interesting. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Do me a favor, click on the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm gonna get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the internet has been buzzing about this Young Thug interrogation tape, if you will, and the person who has basically tried to grab the bull by the horns in with this situation is a self-confessed a snitch himself, none other than Charleston White. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very interesting. Charleston White needs some company, but I'm not quite there yet in inviting Young Thug to be what Charleston White is, and I'm going to tell you why. Ladies and gentlemen, I listened to the tape, the interrogation tape with Young Thug. There are certain situations at that particular time. Young Thug was behind bars already, and the police came in to talk to Young Thug. Now, look at it a couple of different ways. Young Thug speaks about, they asked him a few questions. The first thing that alarmed me, and like I said, this is why you want to involve yourself and hang around people who, like I said, you can bend the law but don't break it. When the police officer was basically asking Young Thug about Miranda, he sounded like he thought it was a girl.
I ain't even been able to be doing shows with. Like they got canceled, or like you can't even get bookings. Like, yeah. Here's the thing, man. Like I said, we don't have charges on you. We're not looking to do anything like that, man. But since you're in custody, do you know anything about Miranda rights or anything like that? You don't have to talk to us type deal. You ever been read your Miranda rights before? Like on TV, you see on TV, you know what I'm talking about?
Miranda rights?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
You ever been arrested?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know when they say you...
Like you can't talk?
Yeah, like...
Not that you can't, that you don't have to, you know, you have the right to do this and that, yeah.
So, it's like on TV, man, it's not really that big of a deal. And like I said, you don't have Cobb County charges, we're not looking to charge you for anything like that. But because you're in a formal setting, like you're in the jail, for us to be able even to talk to you, we gotta protect your rights, protect our rights. You know, does that make sense? So we gotta read you your Miranda rights.
Miranda rights, you know. And so, when they said first thing they tell you before you sit down is that you have a right to remain silent. He said anything you say can't really be used against you, and they were basically asking about the Miranda rights. Young Thug didn't really know what they were talking about. Point blank, period. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to first give you this, and you got to understand why. I did an album called Master Mason in Hip Hop Grammar, and where I put 12 Supreme Court cases on the album. The album is phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, we have purposely been dumbed down. I need you, and like I said, if you got Spotify, you don't have to buy a record now no more. All you got to do is go listen to it. I recommend that each and every person who does not understand the law that governs them to go check out the album. Here's the cover. Now let me get back to the shit with Charleston White involving Young Thug. So now, Charleston White is now going to go on various YouTube channels, and where he's going to speak ill of Young Thug and trying to say that he's a snitch. The sad part about this is that Young Thug didn't snitch. He didn't really snitch. He was already in jail. He was already being charged. He had already been charged. They're trying to, the police coming in and talking to him, trying to work up. Well, like I said, once again, in some cases, when you don't have nothing to hide, right? Yeah, well, y'all want to talk about? Okay, cool. They gave him the right, read him his Miranda rights. Now, any smart, intelligent, you got to understand, Young Thug doesn't, you can listen to him. He doesn't know. He doesn't even know what Miranda rights are. So you got to understand, him talking to the police is benign. He's not snitching on nobody. He can't. Everybody's basically, he's the leader of, what they were calling YSL at the time. So who can he tell on? You know what I mean? Other than somebody who may have committed a crime on his behalf. And that wouldn't have really helped him from the perspective that it was the RICO case, right? In which he ultimately pled to a lesser, getting him out. But that'll be that. Like I said, once again, one must have context and understand what it really truly is, right? It was a 2-hour interrogation. He continued. And you are mad at Yak Gotti or something like that. You mad at Gunna. Gunna don't have no interrogation tape. And everybody made Gunna mad at Gunna. This is what I tell y'all. Hip hop is fake. They pick and choose. This is Charleston White talking about the situation in regards to Young Thug, because Gunna took an Alfred plea, where basically one could call it strategy on one end, but he did admit that the YSL was a gang and all of these other things. So you can take that how you will. But one thing I understand is a lot of people, when facing the pressure of possibly 20 years in prison, possibly 15 years, 30 years of life in prison, you see the real them come out. Ladies and gentlemen, that tape with Young Thug on it is not a snitching confession or telling on anyone or implicating anybody else in any kind of crime that would be detrimental as to what the officers was trying to find out. It led to nowhere. They were basically asking him, general questions, if you will, right? And so when Charleston White attempts to grab this, Charleston White is a pariah. Charleston White is somebody who tries to capitalize off of other people's what you would call mishaps. Charleston White is a self-confessed snitch, if you will. He has no problem with that. And like I said, I have no problem with Charleston White being who he wants to be. I think he should be respected a little bit more, because he's clear about his stance and what he's going to do and what he's done in the past and so on and so forth. And that's his business. But one must be careful in trying to implicate somebody else and call them a snitch, because there's an interrogation tape, right? Now, the first thing Young Thug should have did when they read him his Miranda rights was he should have kept his mouth shut, right? But he's a grown-ass man, and for all intents and purposes, he took his case to trial, and he is a free man under certain conditions that he must honor, or he will not be a free man from that perspective. He had a great attorney in Brian Steele, who also represented Sean P. Diddy Combs in his case, right? And he delivered. So once again, when people saying what they're saying in regards to it simply doesn't have any legs, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't have any legs, because, like I said, once again, they were trying to get everybody to point at Young Thug, not Young Thug to point at everybody else. He was the one that was on trial every day, sitting in front of the camera, where other people were coming into court, right? And they were asking them to testify against him, and was he the leader, and all of these other things. The interrogation tape doesn't allude to any of that. It was Young Thug's, in his best judgment, to talk to the police. He had nothing to hide. You know what I mean? The stuff that they were asking him. And another thing about that, when you listen to the tape, the Young Thug is talking about Lil Wayne doing the song and Birdman and getting him to do a song, and he dapped up Birdman. He came to the club. I seen him at the club. You know, he's talking about music industry events and things of that nature. He's not talking about anything that's criminal that would implicate someone else in a crime, or that would also that he was involved with as a co-conspirator in trying to tell on someone else. You know, most people really, they you know, like I said, you know, Charleston White out here, he wants some company. That's why he said, if you heard the quote, he basically said, yeah, Young Thug, you should come on over here with me. Come on over where with him? Right? What? Come over where? Where they going? I'm trying to figure out what he said. What he said? Charleston White said, come on over here with me, Young Thug. He teased. Turn in your jersey, Young Thug, and come on over here and sit down with the Tattletale. Charleston White is a self-confessed, self-admitted Tattletale. That's who he said he is. He said, come on over here and sit with the Tattletale. You didn't take the stand, but you told. Who did he tell on? Right? Charleston White also said, this is why y'all ship sunk. The whole YSL Tell group was a loose lip full of boys. They weren't just talking in the interrogation room. They was talking on record too, confessing on record, right? Well, this was one of the things that they were trying to, and it got overturned and it wasn't allowed to be in court. They were trying to basically use artists' lyrics against them. But this is hilarious. This is hilarious. Like I said, once again, Charleston White is a joke. He's a joke. This guy said, come on over here and sit with the Tattletale. He says that he's a Tattletale. So you can really see how funny this whole situation is. And you know, by the aggressive campaigning as far as letting people know what platform he's going to be on, talking about Young Thug, thinking Young Thug for some kind of alley-oop with this interrogation tape coming out. And the question is once again, they can't point to, or at least at the end of the day, I can't see, you know what I mean, you know, the backlash that has come from it, right? You know, basically stems from Young Thug's own history of calling out others for cooperating with law enforcement. I get that, right? Like I said, Young Thug talked about Gunna for allegedly snitching, and it became a hot flashpoint during the YSL case, making the emergence of his old interrogation video even more controversial. So Young Thug basically calling, you know, Gunna a snitch, and all of those things is what is really driving the force behind this interrogation tape. But like I said, it's different. It's one thing to get up on the stand and take an Alfred plea and admit that YSL was a gang and various crimes and things that he knew about and so on. That's one thing, right? That is a textbook snitching, telling it's in a different form by taking an Alfred plea, you know, from that perspective. But like I said, that's Gunna's situation and that he has to deal with from that perspective, right? That right there is without a doubt on record. Yeah, this was a gang, that blah, blah, and so on and so forth. So that part right there is that's what one would call snitching, if you will. You're taking the stand, you're admitting to it, you're pleading guilty, and all of these things. Having an interrogation tape, I don't know no criminal who probably initially sat down with the police before, whether they, you know, didn't have a lawyer at that particular time. A Young Thug, it wasn't nothing that he gave up that was incriminating, that he said, yes, I admit to this. Yes, I know about this. Yes, I was there with this. I sent that. I know. He didn't say none of those things. Right? And so once again, I do understand the hypocrisy in how they're trying to point this out. Like I said in the beginning, when they read Young Thug his Miranda rights, he should have said, you know what? I need my attorney. because I really don't know what you guys are talking about. But he chose to speak, right? That's not snitching. That's talking to the police, right? That's not telling on nobody and so on and so forth. And like I said, we are so governed by other people's opinions and what they think about somebody and what they should do and what they should not do, who they should talk to and who they shouldn't talk to. That's Young Thug's prerogative if he wanted to talk to the police, right? But, you know, all is fair in conversations and implications, right? You know, he was saying what he said about Gunner, so now people are going to take this opportunity to try to control the narrative around this interrogation tape, and it is just simply that. And that's how you know that he's not telling, right? Because it's actually an interrogation tape. You get it? Like I said once again, so people can, you know, they're gonna have fun with it. They're gonna have, but ladies and gentlemen, that's not what this is. You know, just from a real perspective, it's simply not what this is. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's unfortunate. Charleston White, I guess he ain't really got nothing else to talk about. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, he felt like, I guess, Gunner threw him an alley-oop by this tape coming out or speaking to the police. And then now the tape coming out, and now he's going to say, well, hey, you know what he's been saying? You know, you might not have took the stand, but you told. Who did he tell on? Who did he tell on? And like I said, once again, Charleston White going to get on there and call a bunch of people a bunch of niggas and bunch of this and bunch of that and how hip-hop is whatever and so on and so forth. But guess what? Charleston White is eating off the culture. He's eating off he's eating off the hip-hop culture from that perspective. You know? But more importantly, Charleston White is a self-confessed tattletale. Like, how? Where do where does this come from? Where now a self-confessed tattletale can get on there and act like somebody who had an interrogation tape is telling, and then inviting them over to come on over here, sit with the tattletale. You might as well come sit with me, Thug. Really? Young Thug spent, I would say, hundreds of thousands of dollars on fighting his case, and ultimately ended up with a good deal. You know, with certain stipulations, like I think I heard one of the stipulations during the time that he can't be in Atlanta no more. So there's a lot of things that this guy can't do anymore as part of his situation and deal that he made with the prosecutors, right? And he's on probation and a whole bunch of other things. So that doesn't sound to me like someone who gave up information on someone. It just simply doesn't. Like I said, but you go ahead and let them, mischaracterize it, mislead you into thinking that somehow, some way, this is a snitch confession. Once again, like I told you before, the internet is wild. The internet is wild. And people will say certain things to try to get attention. We see the shock jock shit that Charleston White tries to do, right? You know, and it's unfortunate. But like I said, for me, I put out a record.
Back to that G shit, niggas be clocking and bitches be wondering like, damn, who was he with? He got his own label, he independent, dog. And that shit that they be dropping, that be popping off. Back for another 12, they can't put me on the shelf, cause I do this motherfucking shit myself. So come and take a ride and watch me dip and glide. I just come to ease your pain.
And I need you, if you really don't understand the law that governs you, like I said, you can bend the law, but don't break it. You know what I mean? And then you don't have to put yourself in a situation where you got to speak to the police. Because like I said, anytime the police ever pull me over, I don't do personal conversations. I just do license and registration is all I tell them. Where you coming from? My lawyer advised me not to have any kind of personal conversation with the police without him being present. But you may see my ID. Yeah, where you coming from? You had any drinks? Once again, I do not do personal conversation. I only do license and registration. May I reach into my glove compartment and hand you my registration, or may I reach into my pocket and give you my license, sir? It's just as simple as that. Well, I need you to step out the car. Yes, sir. I'll definitely step out the car. See, you find a lot of these same people running around here talking about they gangsters they thugs and they don't understand the law. That was the one thing that stood out to me about that whole tape. Miss me with all of that other shit about, the Young Thug is telling, stop. Young Thug didn't know what Miranda rights meant. Was the most appalling thing to me. Because he was like, well, when they tell you, that you had a right to remain silent, he was like, Miranda right. Yeah, it's Miranda. What? That was appalling to me. It's like, whoa, you got people out here following Young Thug, and he doesn't know what that means. You see what I'm saying? Well, how smart is this guy? How intelligent is this guy? You know what I mean? That he was able to have people follow him and have a record label, record group, or whatever you want to call it, be it, and YSL and all of those things. And he was the leader, but he didn't really know what Miranda rights meant. You get it? So like I said, once again, you got to be careful who you listen to, who you follow, and make sure, like I said, that you surround yourself around people who can educate you, who can give you substantive and real information, right? Like I said, the album that I put out, you can go listen to it on Spotify. I recommend that you take this and pass it on to your partner. Because a lot of times I see it every day when we watch these tapes online, be it interrogations, be it the first 48, be it, a regular traffic stop and the officer say, I need you to step out the car. Why you need me to step out the car? If you had this album and you listen to the 12 Supreme Court cases that I have on this album, you're going to know why that when he asks you to step out the car, that you should step out the car. And you can't really win that fight because he's the one with the gun. And the law is truly 9 times out of 10 usually on his side. Right? So I recommend that more importantly than anything. Like I said, the Charleston White situation is just, it's niggery. I call it niggery. You know what I mean? It's like just a bunch of niggerish shit going on that really ain't helping the community at all. I understand Charleston White's plot and talking about he was doing community service and he was doing this and trying to get that, this, that, and the other. But now, this guy calls himself a self-confessed tattletale. Why are we listening to him? What is it that he offers that is going to uplift you, educate you, inform you, and help you to move forward as a better individual? Absolutely, positively nothing. He's going to take the situation with Young Thug, try to convince you that it's something tantamount to what he did. It's crazy. When you listen to the tape yourself. So most people, listen to me. Most people not even going to listen to the whole tape. They're not going to listen to the Young Thug tape, that interrogation tape. They're going to listen to what a few people say, and they're going to be like, yeah, because they said Young Thug was snitching, so, man, they was talking about Gunna, but Thug, he, right? Do me a favor. Go listen to the tape yourself, man, and formulate your own opinions. I'm telling you, from what I understand about streets, snitching, and what that really is, and how that's supposed to be viewed, Young Thug was the guy. They were saying he was the guy, head of the whole organization. They wanted to come in and talk to him to see if, he possibly could slip up and say something, but he didn't. He didn't slip up and say anything from what I understood. So once again, a lot of people are mad that he even talked to the police. But that was his prerogative to do that. But did he give up information on somebody? Did he give incriminating information? Did he tell on his co-defendants? Did he point out his co-defendants? Did he make any criminal admission in that tape? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? So like I said, once again, my thing is, check out the tape for yourself. Because this is going to be an interesting topic that people are going to talk about, if you will. So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. More importantly, your boy Delray, straight gang.
They said Tupac was untouchable, but behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.